ounces. First 12 ounces, yeah. First 12 ounces. First 12 ounces, yeah. Y'all better listen up. This sports talking tough. So if you got a cup, go on and raise it up. I'll raise one with you as we talk about the sports. It's raining stats and rumors. Let us give you the report. This is First 12 ounces. First 12 ounces, yeah. First 12 ounces. First 12 ounces, yeah.
Yo, what's up? Welcome back. Episode 12, First and 12 ounces. If it looks a little different on the screen, Pete can't be with us tonight. He's dealing with something, but we didn't want to miss 2 weeks in a row. It was a good weekend of college football for some people, not for myself, but that's neither here nor there. We'll get to that probably in about 15 minutes. I guess we'll just get right into it. Let's Notre Dame kind of took care of Virginia. What do you think, Bo?
Very surprisingly, because me and all my friends, of course, were betting on Riley Leonard to get a rushing touchdown, as he's gotten one every week so far this year, till this past Saturday. Then he decides to throw for 3 passing touchdowns and over 200 yards. So, per Riley Leonard standards, he actually played a pretty good game, played pretty good all around. Jeremiah Love had a phenomenal game, 113 rushing yards, I believe, if not, may have been more, and I think he had 2 rushing touchdowns there. The only thing I will say, though, is I know you guys had probably seen it, but Marcus Freeman's absolute meltdown on the refs with that trick punt play that they had. I think it was like 4th and 7, and then they get a 76-yard house call that ends up getting called back because the the jersey numbers of the players that should have been on the line weren't correctly there, or Jack Kaiser should have caught the ball 10 yards back on the hike. So even the announcer said it. The game was a little bit over officiated, but you know what? We'll take the win anyway, and we got a pretty. I'm hoping not a tough one. I'm hoping it's going to kind of look like Navy 2 or 3 weeks, or like 3 or 4 weeks ago. Army's going to be Army could be a tough game. As we've seen all year, Notre Dame's great at stopping the pass. However, their rush defense isn't looking great. And with Howard Cross being out, he sat out last week. Hopefully, they can get him back on the wagon this week, because they do have a pretty tough game on the ground with Army. But other than that, a great win with Virginia. I mean, we kind of knew that's exactly what was going to happen. I figured the margin of victory may have been a little bit more, but other than that, Notre Dame had a good week, and on to the next.
I mean, Notre Dame's got I don't want to say a cakewalk to the playoffs, but
no, they did. You can say that they did.
If you pass this test this weekend, I mean, you're what? They're 16-point favorites, 15. I mean, they're 2 touchdown favorites or more this weekend going into it, right? Now,
Yeah.
I do think Army's a test, but I'd be stunned if they don't end up getting in. Now, I think the question is how good are they going to be once they're? I think that's really the only question we need to ask about Notre Dame at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really depends if they can. It really all kind of boils down to if they can show up in the big games, which obviously, as we've seen in the past. Thanks, Brian Kelly, dickhead. That was for you, Buddha.
Here.
But anyways, they anytime they get into like a big game, other than a bowl game, they get to the playoffs, and it's a rough go at it. So, I mean, we got Army this weekend, and then we got USC the weekend after that. Now, granted, USC's, I don't know what in God's green earth happened to them, but I mean, they fell off the face of planet Earth. And, we go in, handle these next 2 weeks. I'm going to be curious to see who we draw in the playoffs, because what could be crazy, me and my buddies have been talking about this, it could be Notre Dame might be able to pull Indiana University. So IU gets Notre Dame, the 2 Indiana teams. You may be getting a live video from me in Bloomington for that game. So it'll be interesting, but yeah, come playoff time, I hope we can show up. Our secondary's been great all year, so it's hopefully we don't get a draw on a team that's actually got a pretty decent run game, because there are very few teams actually probably in the top 12 outside of your Boise State, Tennessee, Texas when they want to and they can show up and have it. They have decent backs that are serviceable at least. Other than that, I mean, it depends. It depends what version of Notre Dame you get. If you get the NIU Notre Dame, they're going to get 40 piece. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I have high hopes, but I don't see us really getting past the second round. But we'll see when that comes.
Yeah, it's okay though. As long as Notre Dame doesn't get snuck by USC, which I'm very hard pressed after what Notre Dame. I know everything's not copy and paste, but what Notre Dame was able to do to that USC offense a year ago with Marcus Freeman, they had Caleb Williams and the guys that they had at USC. I'm very hard pressed to see Miller Moss go in there, that Notre Dame defense, and do anything better than that. So I do think it's a coast to the playoffs. And my question is, what team misses the playoffs because Notre Dame's in? I think Notre Dame has the right to get in it, but that's really one of, if not the team that'll hold out one of these extra SEC teams, and it's going to cause an uproar when Notre Dame gets in. But the Northern Illinois loss, as bad as it is, like team wise, that's the worst loss. It's not like they gave up 45 to Northern Illinois. It was a 16-13 loss. They didn't get you should have been good for 20 points versus Northern Illinois. You weren't. It was a letdown game. And they've handled business since then. Your schedule's your schedule, but they've handled business to this point. So I definitely think that if anybody's a shoe-in at this point, it's Notre Dame.
I mean, I agree. The Northern Illinois loss, that's such an odd loss for them. That's such a. I think that's partially tied to Marcus Freeman being a young coach still, and coming off of like such an emotional win, and like you feel like you've arrived, but it seems like since that moment he's corrected it. Yeah. And like he blows up on a ref. Like that's kind of his thing. Like he's kind of a fiery guy that I think guys really enjoy playing for. Notre Dame's like the team when I look at him and go like, I can't wait till we have a 16-team playoff. Yeah. Like that, it's going to make it so much better where it doesn't feel like they're taking a spot. Because the team I think of when I go like, I'd love to see them in a playoff is South Carolina. That's not going to make it because they have the 3 losses. But, man, I would love to see South Carolina in a playoff.
Well, South Carolina, that's a great thing that you brought up. They're one of the 12 best teams in America.
Undoubtedly.
Obviously you can't just blatantly ignore resume and record and stuff like that. But it's going to be the South Carolinas and potentially a Georgia, because the reality with Georgia is Alabama's in the driver's seat to make the SEC championship. They beat Georgia. Ole Miss is behind them. They beat Georgia. If Alabama loses to Texas or somebody else the SEC championship, they got the head-to-head on Georgia. The SEC champion's automatically in at a 1 or 2 seed, and you got 2 other teams in it. It'll be a Notre Dame where you're sitting here and people are going to throw a fit and say, how do you lose to Northern Illinois, get to coast through this schedule, don't have to play a conference championship game, and you get in? I personally, I'm not going to be that guy. I think Notre Dame deserves to be in. But that's where Buddha's exactly right, where the 16-team playoff is going to fix this. It's going to fix a lot. Because if you stay at 12, it's going to get to a point where everybody else is like, Notre Dame needs to join the ACC. You've got to join a conference, and then Notre Dame starts getting.
You talk about the SEC championship, that kind of leads me to the next game we can talk about, which is the Texas-Arkansas game. And I guess I'll go first here. I've seen some stuff where people are like, what about Texas? I feel better about Texas coming out of that game. That's a team that the last time Texas went there throttled them. And like Arkansas is one of those schools when they don't like somebody, they like hate you with everything in their core. Like from the bones they hate you. That's a tough place to play against a team that felt like they could beat you. Yeah. And you just figured it out. The defense is elite for Texas. That felt like a game like how a playoff game is going to play out. You're going to have teams play that good in a playoff game, and I know people are going to hear this and go, Arkansas's 5-5. That's a talented Arkansas team that's played a lot of people really tough that beat Tennessee, and we can talk about that game later. But like they beat Tennessee, like it's a good Arkansas team that has weapons.
Very well could have beat A&M.
I thought it was a great game. Yeah. I feel way better about Texas now.
I do too. Listen, it's a rival that hates us. Their fan base hates us. Even their younger fans, everybody hates you. Like you said, it's a program-changing game where it's when Sark year 1 came in, we got throttled by Arkansas. Now we're full circle. We go back to Fayetteville. We lead the game start to finish. Our quarterback was very efficient. He's getting a lot of flack for ridiculous reasons. I mean, Dylan Gabriel had basically the same game with no touchdown passes as Quinn Ewers against Wisconsin. You don't hear Oregon fans talking about benching Dylan Gabriel. Instead of seeing like, look, we didn't put up enough points for whatever the reasons are, and there's multiple, or whatever offensive struggles may stall drives, you need to look at the fact what Buddha said. This defense is probably the best in the country. All right, you took a Taylon Green, a dual threat quarterback that they said was over 90% coming into the game, and stifled the running game. He couldn't run at all. You took that away from him, made him one-dimensional. Well, what does Texas have on deck to get to the SEC championship? A dual threat quarterback in Marcel Reed. And if they get to the SEC championship, it's looking like it's going to be a dual threat Jalen Milroe again. So look at that. Look at your defense and how tailored it is to continue to play this way against the rest of your schedule. That's really good. And then you got a quarterback in Quinn Ewers that's 30 games into his Texas career. He leads all Texas quarterbacks through 30 games in every passing category. He's won games in Fayetteville, in the Big House, in Stillwater, Oklahoma. He's beat Oklahoma twice. He has won the Big 12 championship. If he goes on to win in College Station, that's a pretty phenomenal resume for a guy to beat all of these rivals on the road. His numbers are pretty damn good. He'll work his way into the first round again. His ceiling's through the roof. Just like any quarterback, he has his areas of his games that are not strengths. But what he does do is make really good decisions with the ball. He takes care of it, and he has a defense behind him that no other team has. And on his best day, he's as good as every quarterback in the country. So we sit here and we can nitpick any offense in America if we go look through their whole game log this year. Look at a game and say, man, I don't know what happened there. But really, this Texas game wasn't even necessarily that bad. Arkansas, they didn't cut the grass. It was really long grass. It was a slower playing surface. They had 3 high safeties. They forced us to check it down all game long and take what the defense gave us. It was really bend but don't break from their end. You win the game by 10 points. You lead the whole way. We're in a much better place than everybody else in a lot of other teams in the country, and we're the only team in the SEC that's undefeated in road play. So,
yeah, I think that's the thing when you look at a team like Texas. Like, there's not a single team in the country this year that looks like they're head and shoulders better than everyone.
Yeah,
every team has struggled. I mean, we can look at the number one team in the country. They won 16-13
against
a 5-5 Wisconsin team.
Yeah,
it's like very, very probably similar type opponent. Like, one that everybody knows has never really had big time success. And Texas went on the road and won by 10. And I think Quinn deals with a little bit of the Sark problem, where people know Sark's his play caller, so they feel like he should be putting up like insane numbers every day. What people forget about a lot of these great play callers, their play calling's all designed around running. Like Lane Kiffin also deals with this, where people are like, "What do you mean they don't run the ball?" It's like that's kind of what these elite play callers like to do. Mm-hmm. Quinn's been great. He's been a game manager, which everybody thinks is a bad thing. Yeah. Some of the best quarterbacks ever play are just elite game managers, and that's kind of what Quinn's been. And I think NFL teams are going to look at this year for Quinn, and I think it's going to help his stock a little bit with some teams because they're going to be like, okay, how can he win games with just a great defense? Can he avoid the disasters where he loses games?
100%.
Right? You know, he had the one against Georgia where it happened, where he disaster. But I think this game goes like, okay, we know he can bounce back and show that he can just manage this thing to a win in a very tough environment.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's a combination of expectations were crazy, and I'm even guilty of doing that. Like, his expectations were basically to have like a Joe Burrow year in the offseason fans, which is crazy, and just you can't ever expect that type of thing. And then Arch Manning is sitting behind him. And then what you said with the play calling. Sark's first thing he'll ever tell you is we're a run-first pro-style offense. Like, first and foremost, we need to establish the running game. And everything else is based off of that. But, he's in a situation where people magnify the less than great performance and they minimize the great performances. And it is what it is. But just keep winning, and you'll look back and be, top 3, top 2 quarterback in program history.
He also deals with a little bit of people have this problem where they look back in history and forget bad games that their favorite players had. Yeah. So they only remember the games where guys did crazy stuff, and they don't remember where guys threw for like 140 yards and had like 2 picks. Because in their head, that one didn't exist. So like when Quinn will do it or any of these top-tier quarterbacks in the current day do it, they're like, well, so-and-so, that he ain't like him. It's like, yeah, he's actually probably better. He's not like probably better. You just don't remember that stuff.
Yeah, Colt McCoy had like a very mediocre senior season following 2008. Like he should not have been a Heisman finalist. He just was because we were going to the national championship and he was there the year before. I was looking at Jameis Winston earlier. He had like 17 interceptions his last year at Florida State. Like
Yeah.
still one pick. You know, it's quarterback play. You're up, you're down, you're in rhythm, you're out of rhythm. But if you take care of the football, you manage the games, you will take that guy on his bad day over anybody else on their bad days. Like Carson Beck on his bad day is going to have 4 interceptions.
Well, I mean, like people, like you brought up Joe Burrow and like the expectations he had. People forget Joe Burrow in 2018 was very like, like it was good, but it was like, right?
Yeah.
Like right here, he went 16 touchdowns and 5 picks that year. Like
Yeah.
he was just like, blah.
Not a person on earth thought he's going to have the greatest year a quarterback has ever had in college football history next season.
No, but like I think the things you can look at with quarterbacks and go like, what's the ceiling? A lot of it's the mental fortitude, and I think Quinn has shown a ton because outside of the lofty expectations, he's also got his backups got more expectations than him.
Yeah, yeah.
He's with like a crazy amount of like mental stuff he's got to process. Where like half the fan base doesn't want you, half the country thinks you shouldn't play, half the country thinks you're great, half of them think you suck. Like they still remember you as like the mullet punk kid.
Yeah.
They don't know you. They haven't processed that like you're a grown up from then and you're like, a really good leader. Like, no, dude, I think if I was an NFL team, like I'm a Saints fan, I'd be happy to take a guy like Quinn because I think he can handle the pressure. He's dealing with it right now.
Yeah, elite maturity. I agree 100%. Like, tunnel vision on the main thing, and you could tell he does that. Doesn't let the outside noise waver him, and then he's going to kill his pro day, his combine. Like that's a guy that goes there and scouts will just fall in love with his workout. You know, so it's we live in the moment in college football. And I was even telling somebody about it earlier. A lot of times when you get really frustrated during a game with your team, like sometimes like you're watching a commercial fest and it's like these drives lead to long commercial breaks and like these weird elements that lead you to thinking so much was worse than what it really was when you rewatch it. It's like always a holding call can kill a drive, a false start, whatever, and then you're like, oh, the quarterback's playing bad. No, you know, the offense all needs to be in rhythm and execute.
Dude, that we can probably take that point and move right into LSU because it's going to lead to a lot of what I have to say about LSU. So I'll let you go with your. I heard your take on LSU on Coffee and Company, but I guess we can elaborate more if you want. And I have not given my take yet. I took some time to get my thoughts together, so I'll let you go, and then I'll rip it.
And I'm excited to hear your stats because like what I'm going to elaborate on kind of leads to a lot of questions. And you know, I watch most LSU games. A lot of my best friends with LSU. Obviously, we do the podcast together. In the last 3 weeks, it's one of those teams, and I'm a Cowboys fan lifelong, so I've seen a lot of teams like this to where you're going to find more ways to lose than you will to win. And it's like one step forward, 2 steps back with them constantly. And then there is the conflict with Brian Kelly and just kind of what seems to be playing out on the sidelines week in, week out, and the disconnect there, which is giving me too many vibes of Notre Dame Brian Kelly, where this is the Brian Kelly experience. And it's like he shows up, wins early, brings a lot of success, will change your offense around, will really show the like trajectory of a program heading towards national titles, but then kind of consistently doesn't win the biggest games every year. He'll drop some games he's not supposed to drop and kind of refuses to take accountability on his end. It's everybody else's fault. And that's a very frustrating thing I would feel like to deal with as a fan base. But then the flip side of that is like I look at the numbers and I'm like, what the hell is going on? I mean, they had 130 rushing yards. Caden Durham averaged 4.6 a carry. When I was watching, he looked great, and he seems to be pretty good in the passing game every week. I don't know, he had 3 for 17 in this game, but he's absolutely a weapon there. Nussmeier, you know, completion percentage isn't the greatest, but 260 yards, a touchdown. He didn't have the interceptions. LSU 1 time of possession. It's just this frustrating stuff. Like when Florida on one of their touchdown drives with DJ Lagway, An interception hit Weeks right in the hands in what would have been in scoring territory. So I don't know. You probably can elaborate on it, but it looks like LSU's just not making the winning plays every week. They're not like that. That's a winning, momentum-changing play where you're going to get the ball back, take the lead. 3-4 plays later, Florida's scoring a touchdown. Now the crowd's into it. You're on the road. You're facing all of that. You're beating A&M in the second half, controlling the game. Stupid turnovers, let them right back in it, and then they just take over the game. It's just every week the winning plays that are to be made that make the difference in the game. I feel like LSU's losing them.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nailed it on the head where they're just not making winning plays. I think it's a little bit broader than that. More like I always make this statement. I tell my wife this. I tell whoever I'm with. Whatever I say during the game, don't take it. If I say fire the coach during the game, I probably don't mean it. Ask me on Monday what I think. So yesterday I tweeted out, I'll say it on record, I'm ready for him to get rid of Brian Kelly. Fire Brian Kelly, get rid of him, move on. And that was met with a ton of, you're an idiot, you don't know ball, why would you do this? And a media guy in LSU in Baton Rouge said this Sunday night on a podcast he did, that Brian Kelly feels like a well-spoken Les Miles. And it's hard for me to differ from that thought as we sit currently in year 3, and you're going to probably finish 8-4. You might be 7-5, depending on how this Vanderbilt game goes this week. And you've regressed as a program since he's shown up. And everybody's going to jump on this fact first. When he showed up, there was 39 scholarship players on the roster. I hear you, fair argument. Why didn't it affect you in year 1? How'd you win the SEC West in year 1? How'd you win 9 games in year 1? But I can tell you it did show up in year 1. The whole year you had nothing to play for because you had 39 players, and he coached great. You got to last game of the season against A&M, against a bad A&M team. Like, this is not the A&M team that's currently rolling out right now. It was a bad A&M team, and you got boat raced in a game that meant something. You went playing the SEC title game, another game that meant something, and you got boat raced again. The common theme with Brian Kelly teams are they don't play well when the games mean something. So Bo referenced Notre Dame once they play meaningful games, or once they play playoff games or the national championship game. It's kind of his MO. He's really good against opponents that he should beat. He's really good against them. And then people are going to do this with the game that just happened on Saturday. Well, he should have beat Florida. Well, he should have, but it meant a lot because you hit a point in the season where if you didn't win, the chair was going to get real hot underneath the seat, and you got pounded against Florida. I know the box score, you played to lose that game the whole time. And then when I dig into LSU, I start thinking of what are some flaws that they clearly have. They clearly have offensive problems. They clearly have defensive problems. One thing that I think goes under the radar is LSU on special teams has been atrocious under the Brian Kelly regimen. And here's the LSU doesn't employ a special teams coordinator. There isn't one on staff. There's a guy, if you go look at the coaching roster, that has a special teams coordinator next to his name, and his name is Slade Nagel. He's the tight ends coach, and he's just an assistant on special teams. All I know is that since the Texas A&M game, you've been horrible on special teams, specifically field goal. You don't have a special teams coordinator on staff. That's a fireable offense, in my opinion. When you're bad at something, and LSU's been bad on special teams the entire time Brian Kelly's been here. That's number one thing I brought up. The second thing people brought up about why you can't fire Brian Kelly right now. You got this great recruiting class. It's an elite recruiting class. I'll push back and I'll say Bryce Underwood's elite player. Outside of that, you got 2 5-star cornerbacks. You're currently ranked like 4th to 6th, depending on which website you look, maybe 3 on a couple websites. You're not the number 1 class in the country. It's not one of these Georgia classes or like the class that rolled out. It's a very good class. But then I'll rebuttal it with this. Les Miles was an elite recruiter. You brought in elite players on a yearly basis, and I brought them up. In 2013, you had the number 6 ranked class. In 2014, you had the number 2 class. 2015, the 5th ranked class. In 2016, which was Les Miles' last year, the number 2 ranked class. From 2014 to 2017, here are the records LSU rolled out: 8-5, 9-3, 8-4, 9-4. I say all this to say this one thing. It doesn't matter if you can recruit, if your culture is not a dominant champion culture, and you don't have dogs, and you cannot figure out how to get out of your own way. Brian Kelly's whole message is discipline and process. LSU is currently ranked 96th in the country in penalties at 6.7. 6.7 penalties a game. Last year, they were at 6.4 a game. They've gotten worse in year 3 there. Here's another one. They're ranked 87th in the country in turnover margin at -3 a game. Last year, that defense was horrible. They were +3. They're almost a full turnover worse a game this year. So when you talk about discipline process, to me, turnover margin and penalties directly point to that, and you're worse in both categories. And then I look at the offensive stats. LSU's ranked 101st in the country in rush yards per game. They average right at 120. Last year, they averaged 196. And I know they had Jaden Daniels. It's still inexcusable to be, 76 yards worse a game. They're ranked 7th in pass yards per game, which is great. They averaged 316 a game. Last year, they averaged 340. They've gotten worse on offense in both categories. Now, the defensive staff, I think, has been okay. And I'll touch on the defensive staff. I'll say this. This is the other thing. People will be like, and I've said this too, and I'm going back on my statement. Brian Kelly had the Heisman winner, and he had the worst defense of all time at LSU. Good for him on the Heisman winner. Also his fault on the defensive staff. He hired him. You don't get to waive him of these sins of the past because he wasn't the coach of that side of the ball. He hired him. He ran Corey Raymond out of the building without giving him an interview, so you couldn't recruit. He let Blake Baker go to Mizzou. Blake Baker was on the staff when Brian Kelly showed up, and he let him walk. You don't get a pass for that. Like, that's still your fault. Good on you hiring and fixing it, because when you look at it, it is better on almost every level. LSU's run defense is ranked 62nd this year, and they give up 146. Last year, they 160. The pass defense is ranked 68. They give up 225 a game. Last year, they gave up 260. The scoring defense is ranked 65. They give up 25 a game. Last year, they gave up 29. They're marginally better on defense pretty much across the board outside of the turnover margin. That's partially on the offense. But Brian Kelly doesn't get a pass because he had 39 scholarship players. How are you better in year 1 than year 3? You would think logically, Oscar you took over would hurt you more in year 1. So when people are like, hey, what do you expect him to do? I'm okay if he goes 8-4 this year if he went 5-7 in year 1 and then 8-4 last year. My problem is you've regressed as a program and you don't know what to do. And then he added then back to the Les Miles thing. Why it's hard for me not to say he's like Les Miles. If you watched the LSU Florida game, you might have noticed Brian put something in his hands that haven't been in his hands all year. He put a play calling sheet. And he was asked in his press conference this morning, why'd you have to put a play? Are you going to start calling plays? No, but I listen to the play and I have the right to override whatever's called. That's the worst thing you can do for a struggling quarterback and an offense if you want it to move, is have a play caller make a call with you also in the headset to the quarterback, and you can veto it. They know it. Right now, LSU's in a bad spot. I don't see it getting better. I think the Brian Kelly tenure in my head, this is the start of the end. You just watched it on Saturday. I think they sneak into a playoff at some point because, again, they're going to have dudes. He may catch lightning in the bottle, right? He may. But I don't think what the message that was sold to LSU fans were, this guy is process, discipline, and he's going to roll out this. You're going to be a contender every year. He's going to bring stability to the program. He did bring stability, is what it looks like. We're back to the end of Les Miles days, where you were stable at 8-4, 9-3, maybe pop up to 10-2 on them. And LSU fans get mad at when I say this because they're like, well, that's what we've been for 25 years. There's zero reason for it. There's zero reason you should be recruiting consistently in the top 10, and you're not finishing in the top 10 in the ranking. It chaps my ass when I think about it. And the people defending it, if you're okay with mediocrity, then go pull for somebody else, because I don't understand why you would just accept it because it's with the past. He was not hired here to be 9-3 and go, well, we just blip up every now and then. That was the whole point of you hired Brian Kelly, is that you had Les Miles and Coach when they won. So this guy's going to win 4 or 5. I don't think he wins one wide, but I think he gets into one playoff. And that's what I think about it. And I'm disgusted. They play Vanderbilt this week, and they're rolling out New Jersey. Wow, what a time to roll out New Jerseys at a program that doesn't like alternate uniform. Yeah, but that's all I got. So y'all can ask questions or whatever because I got it.
Well, especially when you just had the Omar game, now you're gonna have the New Jersey game.
And it's scary, like in a losable
Sorry, I had
spot.
to.
You don't roll out the new alternates in a potential like bad spot where you could definitely lose to Vanderbilt.
And going to better run the ball, which you can't stop with a quarterback that's going to drop his nuts on you, and you better figure out how to drop yours back on him.
Right. Yeah, I think you nailed it with like all the stats you use, especially the discipline stats, turnover margin getting worse, penalties getting worse, things like that lose you games. Another thing I have said, this is what I'll say to finish on it. I've said so many times that not only do I think that LSU is one of the best jobs in America for a football coach, I think it might be the best job. Like, it's not easy to win championships anywhere. If you win a championship, you're doing a great job. If there's a place that sets you up better than anybody to win championships, LSU. Recruiting resources there. Recruiting landscape, probably the best. And those kids are raised where LSU is religion. Like, you go to LSU, you're going to play at LSU. Then you're in the best conference in America that everybody wants to go play at and go play in the NFL. They all tell you, if you want to play in the NFL, go play in the SEC. You have all of those things around you. You have recent Heisman Trophy winners, recent national championships. The job is so good that Les Miles and Ed Ogeron have won national championships there. That's how good of a job that is. You're sitting here.
It's the only job that you can back your way into a national championship.
Right.
It may be the only job in the country that you can go like, whoops, look what we did.
Right. And then you're at year 3, and I say all of those things. You're 9th in the SEC. You're behind Texas A&M, Tennessee, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Missouri. All of those teams are finishing the season stronger than you are right now. They're playing their best football for the most part. Missouri, maybe not. South Carolina, Tennessee just lost to Georgia. But these are programs that are not as well resourced as LSU. They're not as good of jobs. I don't know many coaches in America that are saying no to the LSU job. That is such a good job that, like, I don't see why LSU fans would have this extended leash with Brian Kelly, given all the things you just mentioned. In particular, I think the worst things are bringing back staffers that you let go that were already here, should have been easy pencil in guys. And then on the flip side, you just replaced your defensive coordinator. Now it sounds like you're flirting with replacing the offensive coordinator a year later. So you got your whole staff wrong. That's,
That's the problem, right? And here's the other problem that a lot of people don't realize. They had a good offensive coordinator, and Kelly ran him out the door. They had Mike Denbrock.
Oh, yeah.
Clearly okay with Riley Leonard, right? Like, he had to figure him out, but they're clearly, that Notre Dame offense has gotten better. And Mike Denbrock is a proven good play caller. He did it 2 years at LSU. The reason he ran him out the door was they promoted Joe Sloan to be the co-offensive coordinator, and Denbrock said he didn't want that. He wanted to be the offensive coordinator. So then when he got the job, he said, "We'll see you later. I'll go be the offensive coordinator here since they want me to be."
Mm-hmm.
So, if you now have to make a decision, that's 2 years in a row you made a bad one on the offensive side. Because also Joe Sloan was the quarterback's coach. So you have to question, is he stretched too thin? Because Nussmeier clearly doesn't look like he's being coached because he makes the same mistake over and over and over and over on things that I think are coachable, like the roll out to the left move. And if you're an LSU fan and you watch it, you've seen it 1,000 times. He panics, throws off the back foot, or he rolls left, which is just a recipe for disaster if you're not an athlete. If you're not a freak back in the SEC, you can't roll and turn your back to the defense.
And then teams are going to pick up on that and film, and they're going to try to walk you into doing it. Yeah.
And I know people are freaking at players on the sideline and stuff. I don't really get too caught up in that. Like, that doesn't usually, that's not something, I think people overreact to that stuff. I think the concerns are more like, you're ranked 96 in the country in penalties, and your whole message is like, I'm a disciplined guy. Like, that's your messaging, is I'm disciplined. Well, you're the 96th ranked team when it comes to being disciplined. Like, you're bad there. You give up 6. No, I think the only SEC team worse than you is A&M. I think they have like 8. They do 8 penalties a game.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't.
I've been saying that. Like, I just think you're winning, and LSU's winning national championships in every freaking sport. Like, they're great at everything. They're as competitive with anybody in every competitive, well marketed sport that matters. It's just, I think it's unacceptable to be year 3 looking at 9th place, and then you got Vanderbilt, who's right behind you at 10th. If you lose to Vanderbilt this week, that's 4 straight losses. That's a loss to Vanderbilt. You were a hair away from losing to South Carolina. You lost to A&M. These are programs that are not as good as LSU. They're not. It's not as good of a job.
You just lost to a Florida team by double digits that had to. They were going to keep their coach 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
That had the record saying we're not going to fire a coach, and you lost by double digits to them. Like it's just where the current state of the program is. And again, I'll say this: it's never as bad as you think. It's never as good as you think. If LSU wins the last 2 games, people are going to be. But here's my concern: I think they do win the last 2 because I think Kelly thrives when there's no expectation. Like, I think they're going to play really good because he thrives when there's no expectation. And I don't know if you heard, Shawnee, but, like, the people that are going to say there was no expectation in the Florida game, they already had 3 losses, there absolutely was. Because you couldn't risk being worse in the first 2 years. You had a ton of expectation. The expectation was you went, and we went over the deal last week or whenever. It wasn't this crazy recipe to get into the playoffs. You just had to have the favorites win. Like, it wasn't this crazy, like, math equation.
You beat Ole Miss too, so it's like there was a position. Say the favorites didn't all win, and you were still on the outside looking in. But if you won out at LSU, you got to win over Ole Miss. You got to win over South Carolina. 2 programs that are playing as good as any program in America right now. So you had a resume at the end of the year to be like, our strength of schedule was good. We have good wins. We're a 2-loss team. We were a hair away from the SEC championship. We're in it. It was right there for you. And you also know Florida's a rival. You knew the week before they were talking about saving players for the LSU game. You knew that was their big visit weekend in recruiting. It's a massive game. You knew what the atmosphere was going to be like, Lagway was going to be like, and you didn't show up. You weren't as disciplined as Billy Napier's Florida team.
And look, when people are going to, I'm not worried. The recruiting class, I think, stays intact for LSU. Like, I think they get all the big names they want to get. Maybe not Jakeem Stewart, but I think they land Underwood, Pickett, Harlem Berry, Cade Phillips. But they were the number 6 class in 2023, and they were the number 7 class last year. Right now, they're ranked 6th. And I get the difference in that is that you get Bryce Underwood. Right? Like, that's the difference. Like, if you don't have Bryce Underwood in this class, like, nobody cares about the class. Like, people just won't say it. They care about Bryce Underwood. But, like, when I say that to be like, I don't know why you think having a top 5 class this year is all of a sudden magically going to change the trajectory you're on. He just rolled into top 10 classes. Like, that's the part when I look at it and I'm like, and you just had a Heisman winner. So, like, clearly the best quarterback in the country doesn't change what your ceiling is. Because you can't figure out how to make guys get up for big moments. Because you're so focused on the process that you suspend 2 of your best players in the first quarter. Like, you mentioned the drop pick. The drop pick is because you suspended your safety, so you had to roll Major Burns back to safety from the star position, so you got a freshman playing.
Mm.
These are
details.
What?
The details. Like, it's these little details.
And it's like, I get this. Like, I get, like, having, like, you're a disciplined guy, like, having rules and having to stick to them, and, you know, you pull on the rope of, like, it's team first. Why are we in year 3 and you got veteran players still breaking rules? Mm-hmm. They clearly don't respect you would be my first thought. And I don't have it in the locker room to know that, but, like, that would be my first thought. Because I know a program that's rolling hot, the seniors and the juniors are locked in. They ain't breaking they ain't missing workouts. They ain't skipping class. They ain't missing meetings. So, like, how disciplined are you? I think the question's got to be asked is how involved are you? Like, are you just yelling on the sideline and talking pretty press conferences? Like, what's going on in the practice field? How locked in are you? I don't know. I could talk about this all night, so we can move on. Like, I wanted to get my thoughts together on it. I guess we can move on from this one to Carson Beck looking like he can play football again.
Yeah.
Like, out of nowhere, like, ta-da.
They carved them up. They carved Tennessee up. They got down 10-0 and just carved them apart. I did see though. I was watching some film breakdowns of it. This was really the first pro passing attack that Tennessee has played all year long, like progression, pro style passing, and it just ate them alive. But that's Carson on his best day. That's why he had the hype coming into the season that he had. Like he can make some throws that really get you off your seat. That gets it over defenders, drops it into tight windows. But it'll be interesting, can he keep it up? He has his 13 interceptions, so it's hard to like. I think it's Carson Beck still Carson Beck. It's just styles make fights.
Me personally, I mean, I think I've seen enough of Beck this year. I just think that was his one game outside of playing a bunch of bums to start the year. I think this was his one chance to kind of show out a little bit because, like you said, this was the first pro style passing offense that Tennessee's seen all year. Well, you go up against last year, could have been, if not, he was one of the better quarterbacks, obviously, all last year. But, I mean, the turnover issues and, I mean, bonehead plays he makes, I just think it evaded him 1 week. I think that's all it did. I really think he's going to come out next week, and he's going to look the exact same. We're going to be on a high right now, and then you're going to ride the roller coaster straight down, riding underneath the sidewalks of the amusement park. It's going to be... It was a thrill ride for just a second, and then you're going to go back down and you're going to be disappointed again. But that's just my thoughts.
Well,
I don't trust that Georgia team as far as he thinks he can throw a football, which is right into the defender's hands. So
the positive for him is he gets the Massachusetts Minutemen in his next game.
Oh yeah, where
So-
they're like 38-point favorites, I think, or 43-point favorites or something like that.
Massachusetts.
But then they got Georgia
Do it.
Tech. The Georgia Tech game could be, is it like what you're saying, Bo? That's going to be the game where it's going to be a 4-quarter game. I wouldn't be shocked if Georgia Tech beats them, and it'll be Beck has 2-3 turnovers, a bad field position. It leads to points for Georgia Tech. Like he's who he showed you he is. And even last year, like he had that weak SEC East schedule that he did great against, and then he showed up and he got beat by Bama. And he wasn't good enough, and he had some dumbfounding turnovers in that. Like he fumbled the game away at the end, just basically tossing the ball backwards, and it ended up being a fumble, and Bama recovered it, and it didn't, whatever. Like that's who he is. He's arm sleeve, heavy eye black, Dayton Cavender twin, just focused on everything but being an elite quarterback, but he could have his moments in the right situations. And he is who he is. 13 interceptions is 13 interceptions. Like,
He's the Aiden Childs of the SEC.
there you go.
I think what you saw with this Georgia team though is the difference in, like, if we touch back on LSU, like it's the difference in the programs. Like Georgia clearly is lacking personnel in places. Like they got a quarterback that'll cough it up a ton and put you in bad spots. But the reason, like, people forgot for a second, like they still have a championship culture and Kirby Smart. Like you still got all the pieces in terms of mentality and culture and what the program is to be great. Like that's the difference. Like when you want to know like why I'm pissed off about LSU, it's because Georgia's dealing with similar issues and they bounce back and go beat a team and keep themselves in the hunt, and you unravel. Like I just think like don't sleep on a Kirby Smart team because like they're gonna do the little things more often.
Yes. And same with Oregon, same with Ohio State. Look at the teams at the top in their games this year that got close, that got scary. They find a way to win. They find a way to win.
On.
Yeah. 100%.
Speaking of Oregon, I don't know if y'all watched that game. I did not.
That game was
betting,
putrid. I watched it start to
Yeah.
finish.
So did
Oh
I.
my god. I mean, that was awful. That was an awful showing by
Yeah.
Gabriel. I mean, to be brutally honest, that was the game, and we, again, one of those teams that we've talked about, that was their, oh fuck, they're going to get snuck up on, they're going to get beat by an unranked Wisconsin team that had, I mean, they're what, 5-5, I think.
Yeah, they're 5-5.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those teams in your conference that's gonna, well, now in their conference, that's gonna play you tight and make you, play out of your ass for no reason.
Camp Randall.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I agree. And we both texted on Saturday. We think Oregon's going to lose the Big Ten championship. I promise you, they're not favored against Ohio State. If Ohio State goes on to go and win the rest of their games, they beat Indiana and Michigan. Ohio State's going to be favored in that game. and they'll beat them. But or whoever, I just think they're going to lose. I think if Indiana gets in, who I might pick to win this weekend against Ohio State, probably going to, a little teaser. But I just think that this Oregon team is more vulnerable than everybody's making them out to be. Everybody's decided they're number one in the country since they beat Ohio State. Will Howard, if he understood how to look at a clock, Ohio State wins that game. It's not, they had the Boise State scare, now Wisconsin. Even the Michigan game, the score doesn't tell the story. Oregon got given a touchdown on a fourth down play where they went for it, and the ball slammed against the ground, and Evan Stewart got it off the ground. They didn't challenge it. They counted the touchdown. I thought it was supposed to be automatically reviewed. That was a blunder. And then, Michigan stayed in the game through the 4 quarters. They were within a play here or there with getting back in it. That's the game I'm using right now with Quinn Ewers, where I'm like, the sky's falling with Texas fans and Quinn Ewers. Did you watch Dillon Gabriel and Camp Randall this weekend?
Dude. I think so you brought up Boise State, and I guess this could be the last thing we talk about. Who do you think's the best Group of 5 team? I mean, Tulane's got an argument to say
I was going to say Tulane, bro. I was going to say,
they had a stupid penalty against Kansas State that ruins this whole thing, but they're locked into their conference championship with Army. Boise State, people are going to look at the final score because they're not watching Boise State. Boise State has flirted with losing in multiple of these games. They just pull away at the end. Boise State's a couple of mishaps away from dropping one, and I think Tulane, if they played Boise State, would beat them.
Boise State is the rush offense equivalent of Miami. Okay? First half, they'll come in, they're down 10, 14 points, and then they come back and Ashton Jeanty turns into prime Barry Sanders. And at halftime of that game, he had 48 rushing yards on, I think, 18 attempts. And he hadn't even scored yet. Finished the game with, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was 138 or 139 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. Jeanty's not in that game. San Jose State beats the dog piss out of Boise State, and it's not even a ball game. Jeanty's really, he's their offense. Without him,
to break it to you. Yeah, when they run into the 5 seed or however that's going to work out, and it's one of these SEC teams that got in or a Big Ten team that got in, they're going to shut Jeanty and that offense down and going to stomp Boise State. I'm with you, Buddha. I've been saying, are we because if you watch national media, it's Boise State's a shoo-in. If they just win, they're in. And it's because of the Jeanty Heisman thing in reality. Like you said, one of the biggest issues in college football in general is I think people stat watching and not game watching.
Yep.
Exactly.
100%.
So freaking defeating. And I think that Tulane team beats Boise State, and if they play each other, I think they're the best non-Power 4 team. But it's if you're watching the games, Tulane's the best team. And so that would be my team in. And I've been saying I'm not so sure Boise's a shoo-in. They need to start looking more impressive to me. Because they don't have a quarterback, they don't have a passing game.
I think the issue is where they're currently ranked, though. They get the advantage of having the already ranked that high. Where, if they do win out, let's say Tulane gets to 17, they're not going to flip them. Now, there is this world that exists that people don't realize. There is no guarantee for Power 4 conference champions to get in. It's the highest ranked. It's the highest ranked 4. So if BYU losing, if Colorado, if that Big 12 championship turns into 2 teams that are in the 20s, there's a world where Big 12 doesn't get a team in. They don't have to have a team in.
I
thought the champion automatically
gets in. That's what I thought too.
High 4 conferences. So it's the highest 4 ranked conference champions.
Oh shit.
Automatic. So if the AAC championship or the American, whatever it is, between Army and Tulane, if the winner of that game would be ranked higher than the Big 12 champion,
and they get in,
they would get in.
And then that conference champion's basically on a bubble, hoping they just get slotted in. Holy shit!
Phrase this: it's the highest ranked. It's the highest ranked 5 conference champions get an auto bid in. But by this logic, you would have Boise State win their conference, be in, Tulane or Army win, and be ahead of the Big 12 team. So you would have the SEC, the Big 10, the ACC, what is Boise in the Mountain West?
Yes.
In the American. And they would just be sitting outside looking in because that's how it works. Nobody ever thought it would be a chance, but with BYU losing to Kansas, it's kind of on the table. I mean, it's there to play with. Like, it's an idea.
That's wild.
That's hilarious. That's crazy.
Yeah.
If Colorado wins, they're going to put them in from a marketing standpoint.
Oh my
like
God!
there,
Why
for sure.
wouldn't you? I mean,
Well, and you also
Yeah.
talk about the night. Like Travis Hunter's going to win the Heisman. I can't imagine unless he has a colossal collapse or an injury, whatever it would be. But yeah, I mean, if they can sneak them in, they'll get them in. Like
And then you got Greg Sankey and the SEC just waiting to hit their red button on this whole playoff thing. The moment he gets pissed off, a team doesn't get in that he thinks is better than whoever gets in the Big 12 or something like that, and start this Super League or whatever they're talking about.
Yeah, dude. Wait till Georgia or Alabama sitting on the outside looking in, and
that's what I'm saying.
A team like Colorado gets in, and he's going to go nuclear. I mean, he's going to go crazy.
yeah. Wait. Yeah,
Yes,
I was going to
it's
say.
Georgia
Wait.
or
I
Bama.
would say just Georgia, because Bama's looked rough
Yes.
all year. I would say Georgia for sure, because Kirby's already made comments, like you mentioned, about bitching about his schedule now because he's played a tough schedule, but he has 2 losses, and it's the first time in his tenure there that he's had 2 losses in the regular season. Sorry, buddy, you fucking slept and your quarterback's a bum. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. The writing's on the wall that if Georgia gets left out, which is a very, very good possibility, that they get left out, Sankey and them, they're hitting that red button and they're going to try to separate from the SEC. They're telling you with the way they're talking, with Kirby Smart's interviews, with everything leading up, talking about Notre Dame, losing to NIU. They'll bring up Boise. They'll bring up all of these teams and be like, you can't tell me Georgia's worse than those teams. We'll just start our own league. You're punishing Georgia because they played this SEC schedule. So we'll just start our own league if you're going to punish us. I think the writing's all on the wall for it.
Yeah, well, that's when you that's when you sit there and tell them, well, guess what? How long you been in the SEC? Okay, well, look at your past years. You guys made it in every fucking year, so quit your bitching.
Right. The hypocrisy.
Exactly, it's insane.
With Georgia.
It'll jump to 16, I think, not next year, the year after. I think that's when they renegotiate it. It'll go to 16 immediately because I think he's already looking at a team like South Carolina going, they're not going to get in. And I think they would, and I don't disagree with them. I think they're better than Pitt.
Yeah, they could easily shake up the playoffs, like without a doubt in my mind, because that defense, like we have said from the start of the year, is fucking nasty. Their defense is so damn good.
They'd win the Big 12 and the ACC.
No doubt. They'd win, no, without a question. They'd be undefeated in the Big 12.
Especially the way Sellers is playing now.
Yeah,
that's one of the best teams in the country. Nobody wants to play the Cox right now.
No.
That's got to be the quote of the week. Nobody wants to play with Cox. The Cox.
That's right.
All right, we probably wrap it up on that.
Yeah, I think we need to.
Yeah, well, I appreciate y'all. Please like and subscribe. Let's run the likes. Helps the algorithm. We've been bad about asking y'all. I'll shamelessly I don't like it. Please, it just helps us out. That way we're not on here talking to each other. Like, jump in the comments, say something. If you say something crazy enough, maybe we'll talk about it next week. I don't know, figure something out. But appreciate y'all. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you maybe on a live test. This will come out tomorrow, so we'll see you tonight for the playoff show, and then Friday. So, y'all got anything?
Yep, sounds good to me.
Hook 'em horns.
Nothing for me other than Celtics are beating Cavs tomorrow, fucking hopefully. But other than that, as always, go Irish.
Yeah, I gotta watch the Cowboys lose.
Oh God,
I love y'all more than you know, but not as much as you think. Hook 'em.